So, welcome everybody. We will start with the seminar on time at 10:00 because we have such a long program today that we need to stick to the time and be mindful of the time. Before we start, just quickly a few rules. This online seminar will be recorded and later published online, and we would kindly like to ask all the participants to mute the mic so that we can hear our speakers in a good way. Before I announce it, so my name is Polona Fonda and I am ENGSO Communication Officer. ENGSO is one of the many incredible partners of this seminar. So the seminar's title is Keeping Girls in Sport, and this seminar is organized within the Gap Women project, and the project is an Erasmus funded project that focuses on gender equality in sport and increasing participation of women and girls in sport all over Europe. Before we go into our guest speakers, I would just quickly like to make an introduction about the project and the activities we have done. So this online seminar, it's also part of the Gap Women campaign. And within the framework of this campaign, we have organized 17 different on-site events that were both related to either Women's Day on 8 March or European Week of Sport, which is annually held each September. Also, this seminar is part of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. This is a campaign by United Nations that is held each year between 25th of November and 10th of December. And because we are currently almost in the middle of this campaign, let me share a few facts about women and girls. So 1 in 4 adolescent girls will be abused by their partners based on United Nations research. But if we have a look at sport environment, 31.8% of female respondents reported being punished with excessive training or exercise, 10.6 were beaten with an object, and 7.6 were forced or knocked to the ground. And those statistics were done by the World Players Association study. Okay, but if we move to maybe a more brighter side, within the Gap Women project, we have also done a research, and we found that 74.3 respondents found it important to provide women-only training and development programs, and 50% of respondents strongly agree that aspiring for a role model status for other young women serves as a strong motivation for women and girls to stay and succeed in sport. And I think this is a very nice introduction to our program and the speakers that we will be hosting today. So first we will start with a presentation of current challenges on gender equality in sport. We will have Ala Krinicina from UFEC and Emin Boskurt, Senior Coordinating Advisor in National Bureau Against Discrimination and Racism in Netherlands, who will present the current challenges. And then we will move to maybe a more challenging theme about structural violence as a barrier to women's participation in sport. So Eleni Trihina will present this topic, and we will conclude this seminar with a roundtable with role models and Olympians and Paralympians. So we will have Galia, Jennifer, and Angeliki joining us for a roundtable that will conclude this webinar. So let's start. As I said, we are a bit mindful of the time. So Ala, I would kindly invite you to take the stage and present the Gap Women project.
Many thanks, Polona. Many thanks for speakers to join us and all attendees. I will be very brief with the presentation. As Polona said, this webinar is organized within Erasmus Plus Sport Strategic Partnership Gap Women. And the name of the project that I think can give you the ideas what we are working about exactly. Gender actions to increase women's participation in sport. And the main objective of the project is to eliminate the gender gap in federated sport and also in grassroots sport organizations for inclusive and sustainable projects. We are partners from 9 countries, 10 partners with very different background, like universities, think tank organization, international and European networks, NGOs, but all of us, we are eager to work on the topic of gender inclusion in sport field. Actually, we developed a lot of actions within this 2 years and a half of the project implementation. We organized focus groups on identifying the barriers that women in sport face when they practice sport. Then we developed strategies on, but sorry, I have my little assistant here with me today. And also we, I think our core activity, our core deliverable is online course on how to increase women's participation in sport. If you go through the link, you will see that we have 6 main topics within this course, and one of them is strategies, how to increase women's participation in sport, where we share the best stories and of grassroots organizations from Europe. And I think this is a very interesting part where you can learn how other organizations from Europe increase women's participation. So many thanks. I think my presentation here will be finished and you can go through the web page and check it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ala, for introduction into the GAP Women project. If you have any questions, this is your chance. You can simply write a question in the chat or raise a hand. So if anyone has a question for Ala related to the GAP Women project, please raise your hand or write in the chat. I think for now we don't have any questions. Okay, thank you, Ala, for this nice presentation. But let's move on. So our next session is about the current challenges on gender equality in sport. And I'm very honored that Emin Bozkurt joined us. Emin is a senior coordinating advisor in National Bureau Against Discrimination and Racism in Netherlands, but she is also a former member of the European Parliament and a former chairperson of the EU High-Level Group on Gender Equality in Sport. And as you know, this, among the many activities that this group has done, they also develop recommendations on gender equality in sport. So, Emin, please take the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. Let me start by, dear participants, by the way, let me start to say something very briefly about the report of our expert group. As members of the high-level group, we were 15 experts, women and men, from a great variety of member states, from different walks of life. We had politicians, we had academics, we had former Olympic champions. So it was a very diverse group. With all a common great dedication to gender equality in sport. We prepared proposals for future actions to the European Commission, the member states and the sport movement in the field of gender equality in sport. And we presented the report, which was actually recommendations and an action plan to the European Commission and the member states. Looking to the different presidencies during the conference of the Spanish presidency of the European Union, which was all about gender equality, I think my message was very clear. We want more gender equality in sport, more impact. And the audience was very clear too, because they wanted more as well. And we really should use sport for social change, for the benefit of sport and the positive effects of sport on society. And we need much more women than there are currently present in all layers of sport organizations throughout Europe. If we take a closer look at data about participation in sport, according to the Sport and Physical Activity Eurobarometer, men are globally more likely than women to have a regular sports practice in Europe. 40% of men never do any physical activity compared to 52% of women. Even if some significant differences exist across the member states, female sport participation is always lower than the male one. The frequency of female sport participation is also decreasing with age. 33% of women in the 15 to 24 age group do not do any physical activity. And this rate increases to 42% in the 25 to 39 age group, 50% to the 40 to 54 age group, and 64% in the 55 plus age group. As far as men are concerned, the rate of physical activity is 15% in the 15 to 24 age group, 28%, the physical inactivity, I'm sorry, is 15% in the age group from 15 to 24, 28% in the 25 to 39 age group, 39% in the 40 to 45 age group, and 58% in the 55 plus age group. And when we look at the topic of women and girls, this gender gap is caused by practical, personal, and social or cultural barriers. The practical barriers include, amongst others, the lack of time, the lack of childcare, lack of money, lack of safety, and the limited access to sport facilities. The personal barriers include the body image, in many cases a negative body image, the lack of appropriate clothing or equipment, the lack of self-confidence, self-esteem, and the parental influences. The social and cultural barriers include the male-dominated perception of sport, stereotypes linked to some practices, the lack of female role models, harassment and abuses, and the attitudes and prejudices about sexuality, disability, and ethnicity. Because of these barriers, female sport participation is more often self-organized and less competitive than the male one. An interesting fact, when we look at membership of clubs, 72% of women are not a member compared to 65% of the men. There is an interesting disparity in membership of young men, who are for 29% of them are member of a club, and young women only 11%. So I will come back later to the club membership in my speech, and let's look now at participation. We saw that women are less likely than men to take part in sport. In our report, participation was one of the important priority areas. We provided Sport and Citoyenneté with our report, and I hope that they can also help with the link so that also the participants of this webinar can have a look at the recommendations and the action plan. Let me highlight some recommendations of our report when it comes to organizations. Give funding incentives to member organizations to develop and implement gender equality plans and actions. Create gender equal sport policies by revising regulations, providing financial support and other incentives, and implementing new procedures. Support national, regional, and local sport infrastructure, including in schools, by making safe facilities and equipment available to all girls and women. Provide financial, material, and educational support for qualified coaches, officials, and leaders to promote safe participation of women in sport. Provide equal opportunities for all girls and women to compete in sport at every level. Design programs that address gender imbalance. and also use legacy programs associated with major sporting events to increase opportunities for girls and women to participate in sport. When it comes to grassroots entities, we said create gender equality and safeguarding policies for girls and women in all their diversity. Provide and secure availability of safe facilities and equipment for all girls and women. Includes disciplinary measures and procedures regarding gender-based violence, abuse, harassment, and codes of ethics, and establish support services for those affected. And last but not least, appoint coordinators for gender equality. Participation of women and girls in sport, or the lack of it, is a broader issue than only the clubs and organizations. Remember the data about memberships. So we are not going to solve the problem by only targeting clubs and federations. Since achieving gender equality is already problematic in organized sport, how to achieve equality in non-organized sport? Who is talking and who is negotiating on behalf of them? Sport is so much more than sport practiced in the clubs in an organized way. Health-enhancing physical activity is an important European priority. We saw during the COVID pandemic that non-organized sport was becoming bigger. The Eurobarometer shows that the most preferred places for sport or physical activity are the park, outdoors, and at home. Data show that non-organized sport is going to be the largest practiced sport. So if we really want, in a broad way, achieve gender equality, we should not look only at clubs or federations, but also we should look at non-organized sport, for the simple reason that a lot of people are practicing or could practice this kind of sport. At the European level, 12% of the people practicing sport do that in a club. The clubs and federations are better represented than non-organized sport in the different levels, dealing with politics, policies, funding, etc. If we do the maths and look at the percentages of men and boys sporting in clubs compared with women and girls, it's likely that more funds are dedicated to the boys and men's accommodations, etc. So how to enhance gender equality in non-organized sport? We should not lose sight of what's happening in this important and enormous layer of sport, which is even considered part of the European sports model. The pyramid structure of only organized sport might as well be considered a tip of the iceberg, seeing the invisible part lying under its structure, making women who are better represented in these structures invisible as well. A boost of gender equality is needed. Let's have a look, for instance, at the parts when it comes to participation. Start at an early age at the level of grassroots and school sport, and invest and promote in educational tools. Because sport in education and in clubs from a young age is essential to learn lifelong skills, to be self-dependent when sporting, and learn, for instance, how to do exercise in an unorganized way, how to use the equipment. Apps can also contribute as well to practice sport in a non-organized way. Education and strong policies help to stop the dropping from participation. Secure environment is also very important. Create a secure environment with good lighting, with the possibility of the right exercises, right equipment, an integrated approach. And when talking about participation, we should also look at the transversal must-haves. Gender mainstream, for instance, is really important, that all stakeholders must integrate the gender perspective into their actions, but also intersectionality, enough gender budget, funding. Sports organizations must dedicate budgets to gender equality, but also policy monitoring and evaluation or research to make sure that policy remains up to date and fit for purpose. Education, I just mentioned that, communication. We also advised coordinators to have coordinators for gender equality who will ensure that equality strategies are duly implemented and monitored, and men as allies, because men in decision-making positions must be engaged to create real change. Cooperation in the case of unorganized sport, partnerships, municipalities, youth organizations, budgets, design of public space, make funding dependent on gender equality. Even a run in the park needs some structure. What is the design of public space, for instance? Women may have other demands than men. To come up with an example, a basketball court could be totally occupied by the boys in the neighborhood, while the girls in the neighborhood would prefer a place to dance or want to practice another sport. Are there really enough opportunities for women? Are girls involved in neighborhood sport? We also need neighborhood coaches to make needs assessments to involve girls as well, who work with other organizations on health, sport, or welfare institutions. Are we prepared for an increase of non-organized sport? And how do we organize this? This is really a challenge for the member states. A systematic analysis about the impact of initiatives lacks. Without that, it's complex to find solutions that work. What is happening right now in the different member states, the local level or the connection with grassroots sports is essential for that, or an exchange of good practices. Shouldn't we give it some thoughts to design an approach to monitor progress on the national level and exchange these practices on a more frequent level? Don't we all want more impact? How to make more of the cooperation between unorganized and organized, and how to make it transversal. It's not a case of this or that. You can be a member of a sport club, and the same day you can go out for a run in the park. It can make a difference whether you are a man or a woman. Where do you run? Are there enough streetlights? Do you feel safe enough? Do I need a reflection bracelet for safety? Or do I keep my phone close to me in case of danger? We need to think about quality criteria strategies. In case of gender-based violence, for instance, a central reporting point. Advisors to help to make the connection with local and regional sport. Clubs could offer a broader package of activities out of competition. Not everybody is training for the Olympics. The European Commission, the Council of Europe, sport organizations, everybody has an important role to play. How can we get more out of all these key stakeholders to create real and durable change? What can we do to enhance the impact of measures, funding, legislation, policies, council conclusions? When it comes to impact, we certainly want more. An intersectional approach to gender equality and gender inclusive sport is still critical for us, and we see little advancement. That's why it's included in our transversal recommendations. The implementation of an intersectional approach seems to be complicated. Consequently, some specific training should be provided on this issue. In general, it is important to look at the intersectionality of the themes. How could sport help wider society lead the way? And the other way around, what can society do to improve the equality of women in sport? For that, a holistic approach is essential. What do we need? To highlight the intersectionality and the importance to join forces of the European Union, the Council, the Member States, and the sports world, also grassroots level, we should think about our roles and vision on the way forward. So let's work together on gender equality in sport to respond to the current environment. This can only be done if we cooperate with national and local governments, sport organizations, women's organizations, and other stakeholders to ensure that women in sports get the recognition they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Emin. Thank you for this insightful and valuable presentation. We are actually getting quite some questions from the audience. So if it's okay, I will start. And I will start with Sal, who is a FIFA safeguarding officer. And they have questions related to marketing, actually. And it goes, do we need to quit stereotypes in marketing about women's rights and also sports safeguarding or LGBTQI+ inclusions? Do we need to try to develop different marketing approaches so to also support the gender equality and women participation in sport?
Interesting question. First of all, before we look at marketing, I think we first should look at what's happening on the sports arena, what's happening, what are the cultures in sport, and it should be a more women or equality friendly environment. I think that's the first thing which should be done, and the marketing follows up after a change of culture. But of course, we should really look at stereotypes. I think the person who asked the question is from FIFA. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And an organization like the FIFA has really big possibilities in hands when there are big championships, marketing, but also communication with media can help a lot because people love sport and they can make an impact by giving the right messages because millions of people are looking towards those games, those matches. So if there is a change and to have a sort of equal representation and equal images sent to the world, they can have a big role in reaching out to gender equality. And in this case, in football, in soccer.
Thank you, Emin. I see a lot of questions about presentation. So Emin didn't have slides or PowerPoint presentation. It was a verbal presentation, just to clear this up. And I also saw a few hands raised during Emin's presentation. It was Irina. Irina, please speak up if you have a question or if there was anyone else. I currently don't see any hands raised, but during the presentation, there were a few. But I think, okay, we have another question from Katerina in the Q&A section, and it goes, you highlighted the importance of policies. If you could give one message to policymakers, what would this be? What should be the priority towards gender equality in sports, especially grassroots sports?
I think I have said that more or less in my intervention, in my speech. I think one of the biggest priorities is participation. It starts from an early age at school, and by learning girls and women skills to take part in sport and creating an equal level, we really are helping not only the women and girls, but we are helping the society. We are in Europe having more and more problems also with health. It's not only the participation in itself, but for instance, in last week, research was presenting that half of the people in the Netherlands are overweight, and it's becoming even worse in the near future. And I suppose that also in other member states in Europe, this is going to happen. So I think this has really a big importance, but at the other hand, it's also good to see the intersectionality. So that's why we came up with recommendations, not only about participation, but also about leadership, because if you want to enhance participation, you also need an inclusive thinking leadership. We need more female coaches. Media should also be held. So it's all interlinked. But yes, to answer the question of the participant, participation is a big one, especially on grassroots levels.
Thank you. And there is another question in the chat, and I'm not sure I understand it right, but if there is an application that is considered as best practice. So maybe Anna, who asked that, if you can also clarify this a bit more. Okay, then let's, if there's no more questions, I have one for you, Emin.
Okay.
And it relates, so when you, looking back, when you started, let's say, when you were a member of the European Parliament, and now, if you compare, do you see improvements in gender equality? Do you see that more women and more girls are joining sports? Like, what's your opinion when you look back and compare it with now in terms of gender equality?
If I look back, we have to look back for quite a long time. And not only when I was in the member of European Parliament, which was, by the way, from 2004 to 2014. So I was 10 years in the European Parliament. And of course, you see improvements. Things are happening. But the problem is not that it's not happening. The problem is that it's happening too slow. I think they should be speeded up in the big how do you say, with European policies. Of course, sport is not at the most important place, but sport is important because sport keeps us healthy. Sport helps with giving also a message of equality, and we are equal. Women and girls are equal to men. So we should really speed it up. And yeah, because if we don't speed it up, if we don't have adequate policies, then it's not going to happen in the near future. And we all want to have that equality. So by speeding up, that's also one of our recommendations. We asked for quota, and I hope that will be established, because we have now an unequal situation. And to balance that unequal situation to an equal situation, we need some of those temporary measures.
Okay. Thank you, Emin. So in the meantime, I also got clarification on the previous question that you mentioned how to help women in non-participatory sport, that it was mentioned to offer apps to encourage women to play. So if there is such an app, does it exist, that would encourage women to participate in sport or to engage in sport?
I think there are many apps, but I think it's good to maybe for you as Sport and Citizenship and ENGSO to also give attention, and maybe you're already doing it, to those kind of apps, because they can be really helpful for women to learn skills, to enhance their sporting. But I don't have names of apps, but there certainly are a lot of apps on the market, and maybe it's good to see whether the organizations who are having an alliance on this important influential project can do something on that.
Okay, thank you. I would say we have time for one more question, and then I think, you said you have to slowly go. And this is the last questions. If more will pop up, we will answer them after the seminar and send them to you via email. But yeah. Last question is coming from France, and it's about girls' participation in sports. So it's very important that they start to participate at an early age. But gap still exists, particularly in the choice of sport disciplines. So the question is, how can we rebalance things with sport federations and public authorities so that girls would not only stay in particular sports, which are known as more girl sports, but they would go into all sports, so all disciplines?
I think because it's also a matter of choice. You cannot push girls to specifically sports who are considered masculine. I think it's a good idea at a very early age in education, at school or with grassroots sports, that they are able to get knowledge of all the different sports. And I don't think that there are specific masculine sports or not. I think we should get rid of those prejudices that there is such a thing. Male sport, so-called male sports could also be very, very interesting and very nice. For girls, for instance, I'm leaving early because I'm going to sport. I do boxing, and which is, considered a masculine sport, but that's absolutely not the case. So I think girls and boys in an equal way should get knowledge at an early age at school or at grassroots sports of all the different pleasures of sport.
Thank you, Emin. Thank you also for sharing your personal sport choice. I think that was now very inspirational for a lot of participants here today. So at this point, I will close the session with Emin. Thank you for understanding. We really need to move on. And I would like to express sincere gratitude, Emin, for joining us and sharing this insightful presentation. And as I said, if more questions will pop up, we will ask you after the seminar. So thank you from my side and from all of us here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. And now moving on with the program, we have Eleni Trihina, who is Administration Coordinator of the Distance Learning Unit at University of Nicosia in Cyprus. Eleni will present will have a session about the structural violence as a barrier to women's participation in sport. Insights from the Sport GV project. So, Eleni, please take the stage.
Good morning. Thank you, Parlana, and thank you everyone for joining our today's webinar. Let me share my screen.
We see the presentation, but it's not in the present. Okay, now it's working.
Perfect. Taking the lead from the previous speakers and within this broader context of all the efforts that are underway to combat violence against women, I'm honored to be here with you today and present on behalf of the Sport GVP project some first insights from our project, and specifically how structural violence can act as a barrier to girls' and women's participation in sports. What our project is about, it is a holistic initiative aiming at tackling gender-based violence in sport, and specifically our team is dedicated to studying and analyzing the extent and forms of gender-based violence and developing structural responses and actions to empower sport professionals and organizations as to be able to actively contribute to protecting athletes from acts of violence, and particularly from different forms of gender-based violence. This initiative is coordinated by the University of Nicosia, working alongside with esteemed partners like ISCA from Denmark, CESIE in Italy, COMOB in Greece, Carter Organization in Cyprus, and TACT in North Macedonia. In a few words, what is gender violence? Gender-based violence is violence directed against a person because of that person's gender, or a violence that affects persons of particular gender disproportionately. When started studying about gender-based violence in the countries involved in the specific project by conducting both desk and field research, we have identified several barriers that exclude women and girls from sports. Firstly, due to the gender-based violence that exists in sports, that can take the form of physical, psychological, verbal, sexual, and financial abuse, many women are discouraged from participating in sports, as this kind of violence undermines their safety, their well-being, and their sense of belonging in sports. Secondly, there are several societal attitudes, as this was the case mainly for Cyprus and Greece, that see women as less capable athletes or not being able to participate in sports, and this has an important impact on their confidence and opportunities to be involved in sports. Thirdly, several broader societal issues arise mainly in Greece, as well as some male-dominated management and unequal financial support in North Macedonia and Italy. And these broader societal issues act as systemic barriers that make women face fewer opportunities for advancement as well as professional development due to these inequalities that exist. And lastly, we have identified as a significant barrier the homophobia and sexual violence that exists in sport. And this was specifically the case in Denmark, where the participants of the field research acknowledged the homophobia and sexual violence as an additional intersectional barrier faced by women athletes, and especially those athletes who are part of the LGBTQ+ community. Our project, based on these initial findings, proposed several recommendations, such as adapting comprehensive strategies tailored to address these various forms of violence that can happen in sport settings, conducting ongoing research, and importantly, assessing the effectiveness of current measures as to see what is going wrong and what can be done to do better. And lastly, are crafting robust policies to provide clear guidelines for preventing, reporting, and addressing violence in sports environments. The journey of our project does not end here. Our next steps include the development of a training package that will include useful resources for professionals and athletes that can be used to prevent and tackle gender-based violence in and through sport, the launch of a gamified e-learning platform, as well as the hosting of info days in Greece, Cyprus, Italy, and North Macedonia, and lastly, the hosting of a final conference in Denmark. By scanning the QR code that appears on this slide, you can keep up to date with the results of our project and find out more. As previous presenters mentioned, tackling gender-based violence is not easy. It's a complicated issue, but I'm sure that all together we can take meaningful steps to create a safe and empowering environment for all people. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Eleni, for this interesting presentation. I'm wondering if we have any questions regarding this topic. If not, then I will ask, did you also research or do you have a number or a percentage of women that experience some sort of violence or transgressive behavior within the environments you have examined? So did you focus also on all Europe or just the countries that are in the partnership?
In the field research was conducted in the countries that are participating in the specific project, and each country has identified different examples of women who have experienced such kind of violence, and identified even women that were included in sports, that were athletes, but due to this violence that they have experienced, they were forced to stop doing what they love to do. And this was a moving, let us say, and driving force to continue this project as to develop the useful resources for all as to be used to tackle this issue.
Okay, thank you. And did you maybe also mention if a woman or a girl, if they do experience violence, what are the next steps, who they can turn to or who they can report to in those countries?
there are countries that have the mechanisms to support a woman, and a woman feels safe to speak out. But as I have tried to present in the brief presentation earlier, due to some, let us say, societal issues and some the culture of some countries, it's not always easy to speak out about it. But we can say that after some women that have started talking about facing violence, this encourage other women to speak out, either to their, if they have faced this kind of violence by their coaches. This, of course, means that they couldn't talk to the specific environment, but some women said that they have talked to friends as to support them in the best possible way.
Thank you, Eleni. Thank you for your presentation. I wish you good luck with the project, and I'm curious to see future results.
Thank you so much.
That said, we are moving on to the final part of this seminar, and it's a roundtable with the role models. So I will quickly introduce all of them. We have Galia Dorak. She's a Deputy Secretary General in European Table Tennis Union and a former Olympic athlete. Then we have Jennifer Browning. She's a sport advisor and international relations specialist at UK Sport, also a Paralympian and a gold medalist with the US women's wheelchair basketball team at Athens Paralympics. And then we also have Angeliki Gerolimou, current assistant coach of Greece women's national water polo team and also former Olympic athlete in water polo. So welcome. Thank you for joining us for this roundtable. So I will start with the first question, which is, can you please quickly introduce yourself very quickly and also answer the question, what do you think are the main reasons girls drop out of school? Of course, in your opinion. So Galia, let's start with you, please.
Hi. So, I think Polona introduced me already. My name is Galia Dvorak. I'm a former table tennis player. I played table tennis professionally for around 20 years. I started to play table tennis because my parents were also professional table tennis players, and as I was doing it quite well, I decided that to follow this path, and I managed to qualify 4 times to the Olympic Games. And now, a couple of years back, I retired. And now I work at the European Table Tennis Union, that is the governing body of table tennis in Europe. And I'm Deputy Secretary General, and also development is under my umbrella, which means that I try to basically take care of the growth of table tennis in Europe, and that of course includes also gender equality and the growth of the sport among women. And regarding the question of why do I think that women drop out from sport, like I think it was already mentioned in the previous presentations by Emin and by Eleni. Like there are several factors that we cannot only say one factor, but of course the main one, I think, it's like the cultural and the societal expectations, because traditionally these societal norms always pushed women and girls to focus on academics, on family, on other activities that I hate to say, but that they are somehow traditionally labeled as women or feminine. And also, like, because of this, you have no time to have sports. And if I think about our moms or our grandmas, they would not even have hobbies. So because of these cultural and societal expectations, of course, there are many other barriers that maybe are also a consequence of it. So like, for example, the limited female representation in sport, because there are no coaches or officials. Also in media, there are no role models. There is unequal investment, so there is less access for women for sport. So these consequences also become barriers. And of course, I think it's also worth to mention that if we think even in professional sport, like many girls, they start to play sport because they are having fun and they enjoy it. But then eventually when they go through puberty or through adolescence, like they start to have body image concerns, and they start to care about their image, and sport can be like very competitive. And that's, I think in the society where we live, that the culturally, it emphasizes so much in women's appearance and less in their ability. It's also an important factor that leads girls to stop playing.
Thank you, Galia. Jennifer, please.
Hi, I'm Jen Browning, and as Polona said, yeah, I was a Paralympian in wheelchair basketball, and I work for UK Sport now. I would completely echo like so much of what you just said, Galia. Like I had written down a few of my key thoughts, and number one on my list was around the social pressure, that it becomes really hard to constantly fight against this kind of stereotype about what a woman should be. And if you're different to that, if you're someone who wants to take part in sport, you're constantly having to present yourself as being outside of the norm. And that's the worst thing that teenagers want to do. Teenagers do not want to be unusual or different. So I think that's huge. And I also really think this shift from like young girls, you start it because it's fun, you make friends, you really want to be a part of a community. And I really reflected on my career. Why did I stick with it? Well, so much of that was around, I'm naturally very competitive. I want to be the best. But I think so many girls, that's not what brings them into sport. It's about friendship and fun. And as you move up and up in sport, the focus narrows toward about competitive and being the best. And that some of that fun and that friendship and community can be lost. And those of us who stay tend to have a real link around identity, and that we continue to get that friendship and belonging from it, but others don't. And again, when academic pressures come in, that becomes an issue. And then the last one I've got on my list is harassment and bullying. Which I've seen as an administrator, like supporting girls dealing with in mixed gender environments with harassment from boys, sort of sexual harassment, getting messages, asking them for pictures and things like that. But even this morning, I asked my 8-year-old daughter what she thought. I said, why do you think that girls start to drop out? And immediately, no hesitation, she said, because boys are mean to them. And like, it really kind of hit me. And I said, has that happened to you? She said, yeah, yesterday we were playing football and one of the boys told me that I'm not good enough to play football. And she plays in a club. She has so much fun. Like football is her life at the moment. So if we've got 8-year-old kids saying that, there's some cultural issues that are right at the heart of this that start really young that we have to address. So that would be my take.
Jennifer, that was a really interesting perspective, and thank you for including your daughter, because I think kids are very direct and they offer very honest answers. And that was a good perspective that we all needed right now. Okay, Angeliki, please, your opinion.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I think the previous speaker said it all. Like, there are my topics as well, like that the girls in sport may experience bullying or even social isolation, and of course judged by others. Like it was happening to me because I used to play water polo professionally. I'm a water polo player, and in swimming and in water polo, our backs are a bit bigger than normal. So the normal comment when I was at school or even at uni is like, oh, like you look so big, but who is going to say that? And of course, it makes you feel ashamed of your body, and it makes you feel ashamed for your choices, of course. So I guess all the younger girls in our age, they probably feel the same if they have friends, or even if they have coaches talking this way, because we spoke about adolescence and we spoke about bullying and everything. But we haven't spoke for the role that the coaches are having in young kids. And for me, they shouldn't be only coaches, but they should be teachers. So I think these are the ones that they should protect, like girls, especially girls feeling this way. And some of them unconsciously or sometimes even consciously, like I cannot know, are gender biases, like the comments are making while they're coaching, like I cannot even hear them sometimes. Like it makes you feel really bad, or it's bullying. And even if we don't want to say this word or anything, like I experience it, and I think most of the kids are experiencing it even in our days.
Thank you, Angeliki. We also got a valuable comment in the chat from Raisa. She commented as being a mother of an athlete and focused on the pressure, combining sport and school, then adapting sport classes to new neurodivergent challenges, and also maybe one point we haven't mentioned, yes, puberty and of course period, because that's sometimes can also be a challenge or pretty uncomfortable for the girls. Okay, moving on to the second question. And maybe with this question, you can focus on your chosen sport so that it will be a bit easier. But the question is, what would be an efficient strategy or solution to keep girls in sport? And this is totally your opinion. So let's start with Galia again.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very difficult to choose only one strategy. But if I try to reflect on what kept me continue doing the sport, it was because I had a strong support system. And actually, my strong support system, it was not my family or even friends, but the club where I was playing, it was very welcoming for women. But I know that it's not the reality in many other sports or in many, not even in my sport. Like if I think in table tennis, if I think about the standard table tennis club, is I'm sorry to say it this way, but it's a bunch of men who play ping pong. So and I think if you are a woman that you just want to start to play the sport and you arrive there, and it's quite often that you do not feel very welcome. So I think that the strategy, if I focus on my sport, should be to educate and inform, because it's not only educate, because so many people, they just don't have this information, or they never even stop to think like, oh, but this environment, maybe it's not welcoming for women. It's not just that women do not want to play, but they come here and they do not feel like this is a nice place to be. So I think it would be it would be about education, but focusing not like, I often feel that we are in the federations and in this talking only to each other among people who is already very conscious about this topic, and it would be try to get this information to the club and to the clubs where people actually start practicing sport.
Thank you. And while you were commenting, discussing, we got one comment from Salagan, and they said that even at their football matches or gender equality programs, they actually often include table tennis as a sport to boost the programs. Okay, Jennifer, please.
I would really echo that. For me, I think one of the key things that kept me through all the way through and up to elite level was I had a really supportive coach. And even though I was in a mixed gender environment, wheelchair basketball at a community level, there weren't enough girls playing to have a separate women's and girls program. He was so focused on my development, really incredibly supportive, really enforced a culture within the club about being inclusive. And so I didn't experience any kind of harassment. I never had any kind of negative. I never felt like I couldn't do something because I was a girl in that space. And so with his support, I was sort of pushed all the way up the ladder to the elite level. And I see that now with my daughter. She's in a girls only club, and I feel like that's an even better space for her. The coaching is so supportive, it's so focused on fun, and she looks forward to being there every week. And so exactly like Kelly said, is creating these really safe, fun environments where you feel like the best version of yourself. You come home from those feeling like this is me and this is who I am. That to me is key, building those spaces.
Okay, so we have education and safe, fun environment. And Angeliki, your opinion?
I think, as I said before, like coaches are really important, as they said, girls before. But I think most important is the family. Like the family should make a safe place for these girls or for everybody, to be honest, like to feel safe so they can talk to them and tell them exactly what is happening. And if sometimes as a coach that I see, like not only from my little girls, but even for the boys, but we're talking about girls now, the parents are sometimes the ones that they are causing the problems. I'm so sad to mention that, but let's say water polo is not a very feminine sport. So like when little girls decide from swimming to go to water polo because it has to do with water, then you're listening a lot to mom and dads, but they say it's not a female sport, like, and they are kicking each other, then they're hitting each other, and why do you want to do that? And okay, as a coach, I can tell them that it's safe and everything, but I have actually to educate the family to be supportive and show them a role model. Let's say in that case, if it's me, but if we have more role models like in water polo or in soccer or in basketball, in any sport that women can participate, then that will help a lot for young girls to keep playing or decide to choose a sport that it's not only for girls, but it's a sport that gives values and gives, cooperation and all these great things that we all got from our sport.
So one of the comments, we are receiving lots of comments. So thank you for this engaging session. Thank you also to the audience for being so active. One of the comments we have received, I think it's a really good, valuable feedback. So we have 3 Olympic, Paralympic athletes here as role models, but they highlighted that also women and girls should be coaches, referees, officials, that all of those positions also serve as a role model. So thank you to Joe who shared this comment. And I also see a lot of other comments, and I'm especially thankful that you are sharing a parent perspective. I will try to go through them all after our role models answer our questions. But for now, we are going to the third question. So, which is, what made you stay in sport? Like, what is that one thing that kept you motivated to stay in sport? Galia, please.
Well, I think one of them, I mentioned it already answering my previous question, and it was like I had a strong support system, and it was mainly my club, that it was like basically they enabled my professional career, because at that time, like the federation, etc., there was no, or sponsors, there was not that much investment. But I think the other reason that I could mention is that I'm like a very competitive person naturally. So I played sports professionally because of that. But I don't think that we should focus on these kind of qualities to keep girls in sport, like, because some girls may be competitive, some may not, but sport is not only competitiveness. So like, although it was the reason that worked for me, I don't think that we should focus on that path.
Okay, Jennifer?
So for me, at school, I was the only wheelchair user, and I always felt very different. But when I went and played wheelchair basketball, I felt like I was part of a community, and so I could be a different person in that space. And I hear this so many times from young people who really fall in love with the sport, is that in that sporting space is when they feel most like themselves. And so that was what kept me hooked, was that week after week I could go to training there and feel more like myself than I did day to day at school.
Agiliki?
So I think I was a bit lucky when I was younger. Like, I grew up in a small city, like, I don't know if you know the city of Patras, like it's like 200,000 people living there, and it's a very big water polo city. So like every Saturday, everybody was waiting to go and watch mostly the boys match. But it, like, when they were all listening that there was a water polo women's game, like they were very supportive, because it was the culture of the city. But even though when I moved in Athens and play more professionally, and I'm not ashamed to said, and I said it before, like, I was bullied a lot from my coach, especially at the national team. What kept me keep going, they were actually my teammates, that they were my best friends, and they were like family to me. Back then, we didn't have the chance to speak up. Like, you speak up, then you lose the Olympics. You speak up that he hit you or he spoke badly to you, then you won't go to the World Championship. So it was really bad days for us. And now as coaches, me and my teammates, we're trying, and we are, I hope, like completely different than the previous one that I had. But what keep going was like, of course, my family, that they were very supportive from the beginning, but also my teammates, that they were the closest family that I had when we were 3 or 4 months away for traveling. So that's what kept me going for so long.
Okay. And this is last question from me, and then we will go into the comment section. What is one lesson that you have learned during your sports career that you would like to share with us now? One lesson, one most important lesson. Galia.
I think if I have to choose only one lesson, I would say that everything that you learn in sport, and I'm not talking now about the values that you learn in professional competitive sport, but I'm talking about just by doing sport, going to run in the morning or wherever. The perseverance and the fight and how good you feel about yourself, all these you can apply after in your day-to-day life. So what you do in sport also helps you in your, let's say, real life, and that's what I'm most thankful for.
Jennifer?
I think when I reflect back on it, I put too much pressure on myself at a young age to always try to be the best. And actually, the thing that I think, if I could go back, like the lesson that I would try to teach other people is that it is more important to continue to remind yourself why you do something and what gives you joy in it. And that's what sustains you, not just through your elite period, but then in adult life and beyond. So there's something about always staying focused on the enjoyment. Like, why is this such an important part of your life?
And Angeliki?
So look, when you play like in a high level, like the Olympic Games, they always teach you and tell you like you have to be the best and you never give up and all that we know, all these quotes that we all listen when you do it professionally. But like now, when I look back and think all the pressure that I put to myself and keep going and putting up with things that I didn't have to actually, like I'm saying, okay, you can always try to do better. And if it goes better, it goes better. You don't have to step on somebody else to do better. Like it goes how it goes. If it goes better, it's okay. If it's not, at least you tried.
Thank you. I think one common trait that all of you have is that all three of you you felt competitive and you liked competition. And I would like to highlight at this point that it's okay for a woman to be ambitious and competitive, but at the same time, it's important to know the balance that it's also important to feel safe and have fun in sport. So let's go to the comment section. We have Marcus from Ireland. And Galia, this question is more for you. So he's a table tennis coach and has a daughter that plays table tennis as well, but there are only a few girls playing in her age group. So his question is whether there are some mentoring programs for girls at a younger age. Maybe you can answer that on behalf of European Table Tennis Union, if you have any mentorship programs or programs like that.
So we do not have mentorship programs for underage players or athletes because somehow that lies we believe that it lies maybe in the hands of the national associations or like more grassroots programs, etc. We do have some mentoring programs for older athletes or like coaches and even referees, etc. So we're focusing more in that age group. I don't know, to be honest, if the Irish Table Tennis Association has any mentoring programs, but I believe that it's a good practice for associations, and we usually do some recommendations for our member associations on what they should be focusing on, and this could be one of them.
Okay, we have a lot of comments where participants shared their own experience, but I will go to the question of John. So maybe that's for you, Jennifer and Angeliki now. He thinks that a lot of sport clubs are really focusing on success story and competition and achieving like results. So what do you think it's the best way to address this? That the clubs, so that the clubs would not only focus on developing the next world champion, but focus on all other positive aspects that sport can offer. Jennifer, please.
So I think some of this is about the kinds of stories that we celebrate and talk about, and what is the purpose of that club? Is the club there to generate more success stories in terms of performance success, or is it there to have a positive impact in the community? So if you start rethinking about what success is, then the kinds of stories that you tell become really different. So if success for our club is about more young people have confidence, then the kind of success stories are going to be about great coaches who are inspiring young people to have confidence. And that's what you talk about, rather than this guy went and won this competition there. So I think some of it is just around storytelling and rethinking what success means. And here in the UK, we've been doing this more and more even with our elite athletes. Only a small percentage of our elite athletes go on to win Olympic and Paralympic medals, but a lot more of them have really exciting and inspiring stories to tell about using their platform for social impact. So often the best stories we tell are about an athlete that's advocating for environmental protection, or an athlete that's doing something around gender-based violence. And those stories are about them being so much more than just a champion.
Thank you. Angeliki?
I totally agree with Jennifer. Like, we have to see what success means. But I think mostly all the clubs, like in younger ages, what they care about is like participating and having fun. Like becoming an elite athlete, you are normally do that when you are over 17 or 18. Like, you're not, young one. So then, yeah, we are talking for other goals, and the athlete is having other goals. But when you're in younger age, and when we are talking about adolescents, like, what is most important, and as I said before, like, coach is important, and family is important, to make their own goal, but participation and have fun, I think it's the most important, even for elite athletes. So, like, I'm with Jennifer, so I think that's it.
Okay, great. So let me tell you, we are getting so many comments. The audience is very engaged. You can also maybe read some of them. There's a lot of comments relating to hormonal cycle and periods. And we know, based on the research, that many girls, when they get their period, they don't feel as comfortable doing sports anymore. So maybe if we just do a quick opinion on that as well. Galia, for example.
So, like, when I was competing or starting to compete, let's say, there was not so much talk about this subject, and it was something that we would even not be able to share with our coaches. But it was a reality that it was affecting highly on your performance, not, of course, in your day-to-day practice, but also in competition. Some days, sometimes you have to play a very important match on your first day of period, and you'll have cramps and you are throwing up of pain. Sometimes it gets that extreme. And this was something that you had to deal with in silence. And what I'm very happy about is that it's now, thank God, the society and is changing, and there is a lot of research and about this topic. And what I know, for example, like in Spain, that it's where I'm from, in the training center, and also, like, not only in the training center, but all over the country, many coaches, they went through training about this topic. And they know now how to train better. Maybe they're not experts, but they know they're aware of the situation, and they know how to adapt the training and the workload for the athletes, adapting it to their periods. What is, like, extremely important, because I think, like, when we're talking about professional athletes and about performing and playing at that level, it's so much easier to adapt to your body, to adapt the training to your body, than forcing your body to go through something it's not ready to go through.
Thank you, Galia. So I will go now to Angeliki first, because, Jen, for you, I have a bit different question. So Angeliki, please.
Yeah, like, especially in adolescents, we have to be aware that all the girls, they are more self-conscious and about their changing bodies, because it does change. Let's be realistic. It's like, if I'm allowed to say, the boobs are getting bigger, the whole body is changing. So especially in a sport like water polo, that you have to wear a bathing suit and go out so everybody can see your body, you're feeling naked. So I think one of the reasons that the girls get more concerned and they are feeling more ashamed is that. But what is most important, it's like the communication. Like, it's okay if your body is changing. It's okay if you have cramps and you're not feeling okay. But as she said before, like, you have to be ready for that. Imagine that we have to jump in a cold water and play a final while having your first day period and you had your cramps, but you have to do it. And we have to think that it's not something that can stop you. You know, you have to deal with that and make good medication or be able to communicate instead of feeling insane about it.
Okay, thank you. So we are getting towards the end of the seminar, and I will only take one more question, which will serve as a conclusion. Maybe it's a bit personal, Jennifer, but you mentioned a comment from your daughter that boys are mean, and that was as one of the obstacles why she didn't feel comfortable doing the sport. So what will be your advice to her?
My advice to her, well, what I said to her this morning was, don't let anyone else's, I think my exact words were, don't let some dumb boy change how you feel about yourself. So, but maybe that applies to us as adults as well. It's really about helping her have the confidence to understand herself and what she cares about, and to kind of insulate herself from what the kind of negative attitudes. Key to that, though, is that she's got parents who support that. So there's sort of a duty on all of us here to keep building that positive narrative for the girls and the women around us, so that any of those negative comments get kind of swatted back by all the positive comments that all of us are creating. So.
Okay, thank you. So I will just quickly sum up. We have received lots of comments. One of the things that they also mentioned, how to increase participation, is the success of athletes at international stage or European stage. And I agree with that. It has an impact, but we don't want girls just to start sport. We want to keep them in sport for a lifetime. So, and for that, we need to create safe spaces, fun spaces, education, have a support from family, coaches, and other sports officials. So thank you, Galia, Jennifer, and Agiliki for this very inspiring roundtable. I have goosebumps because I think it was very inspiring and motivational for me and for everyone else who joined us today. So we had more than 100 participants throughout the whole seminar, and I really thank to each and every one of you who contribute to this seminar today. But before we go to the conclusion of the seminar, I would just like to share some of the resources with you. So within as Ala already mentioned before, within the Gap Women project, we have developed an online course. The partners developed the online course, which is entitled How to Increase Women's Participation in Your Grassroots Sport Organization. I encourage you to scan the QR code and have a look not only at the online course, but the whole website of the project as well, because there you will also find the studies and research we have done within this project, and also news and reports on all of the activities that have been implemented. And I will give you a few more seconds to scan the code, but don't worry, you will also receive the presentations after the seminar through email. As Amin mentioned, there is also an action plan and recommendations that were developed by the high-level group on gender equality in sport, of which she was a chair. It's entitled Towards More Gender Equality in Sport. And again, you can scan this QR code to get to the page where you can download the document. And last but not least, let me also mention the European Commission's Gender Equality Strategy 2020-2025. This strategy sets out key actions for the next 5 years and commits to ensure that the Commission will include an equality perspective in all EU policy areas. And that said, on behalf of the GAP Women partners, I would like to say a big thank you to all the guest speakers and all the experts and athletes who shared your perspective and presentation with us, and also all the participants that have joined today's seminar. I was following the comments and I saw that we went beyond through Europe, so we also had participants from Africa, Asia, and maybe other continents as well. And we are very thankful for that. And I hope you like the seminar. And if you have questions, here's the webpage to the GAP Women project, but you can always also message us via email. So thank you and see you next time, because I'm pretty sure we will have more seminars on gender equality in the future. Thank you.